All right, stages 1 and 2 were relatively long videos because there was a lot of meaty information in there that we had to impart to you. Stages 3 and 4 are not as long. It doesn't mean that they aren't as important, but I think stage 1 and stage 2, when you're assessing your potential and looking for your project, can be relatively interesting. When you get to the feasibility studies, you're now getting into the grunt work. And so these are ones that I'll go through relatively quickly, but I think what you're going to have to do is preparing your business plan is you're going to have to sit down with the textbook here, sit down with your project there, and sort of fill in the blanks and work out these factors. So stage 3 is the feasibility study. You come up with an idea. Will it work? Okay, and right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that the whole point of a business plan is that by the time you get to the end of it, it will be used as a risk management tool. Number one is it will say, okay, no, we don't do this venture because, number one, it's not going to be profitable enough. And number two, the risks are too great. Or you're going to get to the end, you're going to say, okay, this works, but this is now our guiding document, the document that tells us where to go, what to do. And this is the document that's going to be used to raise capital. So the feasibility studies are important aspects of this. And we start off with the market feasibility study, and then we go into the cost and profitability feasibility study. Okay, so stage 3, market feasibility study, it's the first comprehensive plan when contemplating a new venture. The components of it are in fact 6, although 7 are listed on slide 50. The first one is the concept itself. Then there's the technical feasibility. Can we actually make this? Then there's the assessment of the market. Does anybody even want it? Then we do the marketing plan. How do we reach those people now that we know that they want it? Then we check the supply management to see if we're going to be able to continue to get the supplies we need necessary to do it. Step 7 of the feasibility study is the cost and profitability assessment, but that's stage 4, and we get into that video a little later. Okay, the venture concept. In your business plan, you explain the concept and what sets it apart from the other businesses. We saw that when we were, we didn't. You will see that when we talk about the elevator pitch that you have to do. Part of the elevator pitch is what differentiates me from this guy? What do I do that's better than this guy? Okay, so what sets the venture apart from the other businesses on the market? Technical feasibility, is it a new invention, highly innovative, moderately innovative, slightly innovative, or a copycat? Okay, a new invention is something new and revolutionary in the marketplace, like the Segway. It was a bit of a flop, mind you, but the Segway, there was nothing like it out there. Okay, highly innovative would be something like you had your computer and you had your cell phone, and then you get an iPad. Okay, highly innovative. Moderately innovative would be a iPad that does something differently. Slightly innovative, I don't know, splitting hairs here, but a copycat is just when you do something somebody else does, and you're either going after a certain market or you're just going to go head to head with them. Okay, then you have the market assessment. What type of market is it? Is it a consumer market? So am I selling to a consumer or is it an institution? Pardon me. If I have hospital equipment, I'm not selling to the patient. Okay, I'm selling to the hospital. So it's an institutional market. Is it an industrial market? Okay, is it a construction, something that I'm selling to the construction market, or is it something that I'm selling to metal fabricating? So you're looking at an industrial market. Is it a government market? A government market is huge. Okay, if you can find something that a government needs, then you're going to make a fortune, because there's federal governments, provincial governments, municipal governments, Aboriginal governments. I mean, there's all sorts of governments that you can sell things to. And then the last one is an international market. Well, okay, if you're selling it internationally, that's very specific, but it's probably it's got to be one of the others. It's got to be an international institutional market, an international government market, an international consumer market. All right. And then what is your market? So you see the list on page 68 of the textbook, looking for features and benefits. And boy, all of a sudden my allergies are bad. I'm just going to take a short break. Okay, I'm back and I've got some orange juice. Hopefully that'll take care of my throat, and I apologize for that. So we're getting to the point where I said, what is your market? On page 68, it lists it. Who is your customer? How big is the market? Where is it located geographically? How fast is it growing? What organization and or individuals are most likely to buy the kinds of products or services? Why do they buy it? Where and how do they buy it? How often do they buy it? What are the principal requirements in selecting the product or service of this type? So you do that sort of market assessment. Let's look at the question, who is your customer? And again, I'm coming back to the NutraSweet example, because they made a tremendous mistake in this regard. On slide number 52, I show some Diet Coke cans, and at the bottom you can see a little squiggly thing, and it says NutraSweet. Pardon me. Saccharin free. This is the old cans. And saccharin free, that was the problem. Remember, the saccharin caused cancer in mice, and so they stopped using it. And Coke wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there was no saccharin in theirs, and that it was NutraSweet, aspartame. Well, that was fine, because aspartame had a 20-year monopoly because they had a patent. 17 years. It's now 20 years. Back then it was 17 years. And so they had the whole diet drink market sewed up between themselves. As they were getting close to the end of the patent period, they realized that they should really build up goodwill by use of a trademark, so that people would feel comfortable with continuing using aspartame or NutraSweet's aspartame after the patent expired, because at that point anybody could make aspartame, and they could call it something else, fundamental sweet, whatever, and compete. So they decided they had to build up some goodwill with their customer. And they said, all right, we have to make sure that the consumer that drinks the pop knows that it's got NutraSweet aspartame in it. And so they went to Coke and they said, we want to put this label on your can. And Coke said, no, we don't do that, because we have this company policy that says the only other company's logo or trademark that can go on our cans are ones that we have a partnership with, like McDonald's. Okay, and NutraSweet said, no, you're putting it on our cans. And Coke said, no, we don't do that. And NutraSweet looked at them and said, all right, in the next 5 years, where are you going to get your aspartame from? And Coke went, oh, wait a minute, they got a patent, we can't get it anywhere else. And they said, oh, okay, yeah, we'll put your label on our cans. Well, NutraSweet forgot they didn't really stop and think about who their customer was. Their customer was not the consumer. The consumer was buying Diet Coke because they liked it better than Diet Pepsi, okay, or vice versa. NutraSweet's customer was Coca-Cola, and NutraSweet's customer was Pepsi-Cola. And so they angered Coca-Cola, so that after the expiration of the patent, Coca-Cola began to buy their aspartame from someone else. it may now be that they're buying at NutraSweet again, but NutraSweet went basically insolvent, and they may have been purchased by somebody else, and now that company deals with Coca-Cola. But back then, Coke said, okay, patent's over. We don't buy from you because of the way you treated us. So they didn't treat their customer correctly. So you have to really decide, in a situation like this, is it the diet pop that is our customer, or is it the person that wants the diet pop? NutraSweet also fell afoul of competition laws, and we get into ethics a little bit in this course, as we did when I suggested what you could do to instill a more ethical atmosphere or environment in your business. NutraSweet, the patent was going to expire after 17 years. In the United States, they could go and they could pay their congressman or their senator, here's a bag of money for your next election. Give me an extension on the patent. And that politician would introduce a bill in the House, and they would get a 3-year extension to 20 years on the patent. It had to have been designed that way only to get political donations. There was no other reason. Anyway, eventually that was frowned upon, and so they now have a 20-year patent. Like most other countries in the world, they all got together under the World Intellectual Property Organization to have standardized laws. Anyway, just before the expiration of the patent, NutraSweet came to Coke and said, okay, here's a contract that you're going to sign that says you'll buy aspartame from us for the next 7 years. Well, that was 3 years until the expiration of the patent, plus 5 years. And Coke said, well, why would we do that when after the expiration of your patent we'll be able to buy aspartame at a lower price because there'll be competitors? And NutraSweet said, where are you going to get your aspartame for the next 3 years? So Coke could not say go away, because they would then be giving up the diet pop market to Pepsi. Pepsi couldn't tell them go away, that's unfair, because they would be giving up their diet drink customers to Coca-Cola. So NutraSweet beat them up. Now, one of those contracts, I don't know whether it was the Pepsi one or the Coke one, found its way to the Consumer Protection Branch in Ottawa. And the Consumer Protection Branch said, hey, that is abusive dominant position in the marketplace. NutraSweet was charged with an offense under the Competition Act. Those contracts were declared null and void. The company was fined heavily, got a bad reputation, and all but disappeared in Canada and the United States. It still thrived in Mexico, and it may be that the companies are now dealing with NutraSweet through there. But their poor ethics came back to bite them, all right? So you have to, say, ethics, I'll just cheat a bit. Like, who cares? You'll care, all right, when it comes back to haunt you. All right, so who's your customer? Very important to keep in consideration. Segment your market. Why do you want to segment your market? Well, you'll not likely have a promotional budget sufficient that you can market to the whole world and sell to the whole world. And so you have to look how best to communicate effectively to a market that you can actually serve. So there's a geographic location, that would be Lower Mainland, Vancouver Island, all of British Columbia, Western Canada, all of Canada, Canada and the United States, okay. Demographic market, the age, gender, sexual orientation, relationship, marital status, family size, race, religion, education, income level, and occupation. I put in sexual orientation. That's why it's in brackets. It's not one of the ones listed in the book, but I think that there are market opportunities for not only gender, but then to break down the gender into smaller categories for sexual orientation, okay? And also it said relationship status. I put in marital because you have marital relationships, you have common law relationships, and you have extended families, all sorts of different ways that you can break your market down demographically. Psychographically, can it be a lifestyle status, a means of purchasing, consideration, or reasons for purchasing? So, lifestyle, you can get lots of examples of that, particularly with, all the exercise gadgets and everything. And on TV, they have this workout app where you can actually, be in your living room and you're running on a treadmill and you're talking to a coach, and these things are obviously lifestyle and status factors. Okay, so you look at that and you segment your market. Then once you've figured out what your market is, you have to do market research. Okay, there's the observational method. You can look at shoppers in a store, you can look at traffic flow in a mall, you could look at choice of cafeterias, choice of restaurants, all sorts of ways that you can watch and see how people choose, which products and services to buy. Then there's the questionnaire methods, and this is something that you might want to consider doing, although we'll have to be a little more careful. Quite often when we had a classroom environment, one student would have a questionnaire about a product or a service that they were thinking to provide, and they would hand out a questionnaire to all the people in the class, and they would get confidential results to the survey. COVID, another problem. So I think if one of you says, okay, I think I've got a service that would be really valuable to students at a university. Wow, we've got a class of 30 people. I'd like to do a survey. Well, I cannot give you their email addresses because they would then give you the results of the survey, but you would have some personal information who they are, right? So I think if you wanted to do one of those, and it's probably turn out to be a nightmare, but you could send your survey form to me, okay? I can send it to the class, ask them to scan it and send it back to me. I'll collect them all and then send it back to the group that's doing the survey, okay? Keep that to a minimum if we can. I never really thought about it, but I'll also talk to the other instructor that's teaching entrepreneurship and small business management in the summer term so that you can expand the size of the survey and see if she might be willing to accept the surveys, send them to her students, collect them back, and give them back to you. All right, the question method. If you're going to conduct a survey, it should start out with a problem statement. You should look at the questionnaire design very careful. Figure out the sampling procedure. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. But there may be other ways that you can do it. It may be that you belong to a club, and so you just circulate them in the club, and they give you them back without their information on it. And then you analyze the data. So this is something you're just going to have to do, and so you sit there with the book, you open it up at page 74 to 77, and you say, okay, how can I do this? And you work your way through it. Secondary research. This would be going to Stats Canada and just saying, okay, I need to find out how many people are in this age group in British Columbia, and digging through the stats, because you can't do your market research without data. Okay, then one thing you'll probably really be tired of by the time you're finished the university is the SWOT analysis. You do SWOT analysis all the time because it is something that is just absolutely essential for businesses. Who are your competitors? You figure out who they are. How do they compete? The key elements of their marketing strategy, their pricing, promotion, and place of business, how they distribute their products. That's what we're talking about here, okay? Now, I've given you the SWOT analysis out of the textbook, plus I went online and there was one really sort of condensed SWOT analysis suggestion. And the two of them are very, very similar because they're both intended to do the same thing, but there's slight differences which might prove of assistance to you. Okay, so the textbook, pages 83 to 84. Strengths. What distinct advantage does your product offer or service? What do the customers like about your product or service? That's where your data comes in. Why do the customers say they enjoy doing business with you? Is there anything that you currently offer that cannot be copied by a competitor now or in the future? So that's the strengths. And then the weaknesses, what does your company do now that has room for improvement? So it might be an internal opportunity to actually provide better services or products. What do your customers dislike about your product or service related to the competition? What does your company do poorly? Sort of the same thing. What do the competitors do better than you? Okay, so you might be doing really well, but somebody else might be doing something better. What is it that they do? Do competitors have a particular market or segment locked up? And if so, can you crack that nut? Opportunities. What and where are the interesting opportunities in your marketplace? Okay, it might not be a head-to-head competition. It might be a niche marketing, and so you find that out. What important trends are occurring in your local area or across the country that could possibly impact your business? There has been a huge sweeping increase in adventure tourism. A huge sweeping increase in extreme sports. And there's still many, many more opportunities to capitalize in this area. What do you anticipate happening in the future that may represent an opportunity? That's a tough one. You need a crystal ball for that one. And then threats. What current obstacles do you face? Lack of funding, lack of expertise. What is your competition doing that could negatively affect your business growth? I had a good example of that, and it's just gone. So I'll come back to that one later if it occurs to me. Are there required specifications or government regulations relating to your product service? And are those regulations changing? My all-time favorite client, Ray, that I mentioned earlier, brought in fireplaces from the United Kingdom and sold them in Canada and the United States under a license as the exclusive distributor. Well, the UK everything was fine, but in Canada, the Canadian Safety Standards Branch decided that the way the gas fireplaces were vented required a change. So here he had this wonderful market where he just brought in products and sold them. And he said, wait, no, we have to change the venting system. And the United Kingdom said, well, that's your problem, not ours. We're not going to do it. And so he was required to now change his operation, bring the fireplaces into Canada, and then modify the venting system before he could sell them here, just because of the change in the government regulation. My client with the handheld gun, I talked about how there was no spark, or literally no spark, not enough spark to cause an explosion. The standards branch in the United States, the UL, Underwriters Laboratory, decided that all instruments like that should have a spark level of less than something or other. And their gun didn't qualify. And so they went down and they argued and they went back and forth and argued and back and forth and said, for our industry purposes, our gun cannot change to this new standard because it's incredibly costly and it's not necessary in the industry. And Underwriters Laboratory said basically for the longest time, like, who cares? We have the standard. You have to meet it. they finally got them to put the gun under a different category of instrument so that it didn't have to meet this ridiculous standard. And then what happened was they said, okay, now you're in this new category. Before you can sell any more, you have to be tested. And the client said, well, we have sales in progress right now. We just can't stop. And Underwriters Laboratory said, no, sorry, you can't sell any in the United States until you meet this standard. And so they had to rush to get so many guns down to them. The Underwriters Laboratory said, okay, it'll be 6 months before we can get around to yours. We've got this long list of people ahead of you. So they actually had to go to a private testing laboratory, have it done, have the results sent in, certified. And they got it all done, but it was like a nightmare just because of change in government regulations. There's some threats that you cannot anticipate, though. The Canadian government, a couple of years ago, made the decision to stop all importation of toys from China that were painted because they were using lead-based paint. And the first thing a child does is to get a toy and go, oh, stick it in their mouth, right? So it was a health hazard. And China got really upset at this, and so they put a notice out that no pork from Canada would be imported into China because of mad pork disease. All right, well, there is no such thing as mad pork disease. There's mad cow disease, but there's no mad pork disease. But they just said there was because they then said to Canada, oh, well, we'll take off our prohibition against pork if you take off your prohibition against lead paint. So they negotiated back and forth. Well, while all that's happening, the pork producers in Canada had to stop selling pork to China, which was a terrible financial hit, and it couldn't be anticipated. But the idea is, in the industries that you know of, you look for the threats that are identifiable. Is changing technology threatening your position in the marketplace? Well, the BCD Electronics that had the gun that tested the rivets destroyed the market for those big testers. Okay, those big testers can be used, but now in a very small portion of the market. And so something that their competitor did kicked the chair out from under them. Do you have financial problems that could keep you from being able to effectively compete? High overhead, your liabilities on your balance sheet are out of control, receivables slowed down. Any number of financial problems could cause and you look at it and see. Okay, so that's the SWOT analysis. The one that I got off the internet, and you can see down in the right-hand corner where it came from. A little more simplified. Things your company do well, qualities that separate you from your competitors, that's the same. Internal resources such as skilled, knowledgeable staff. That's a strength if you got it. If you don't, it's a weakness. BCD Electronics had this gun. He needed $35,000 to finish the development of it. What was that? It was the software development for the computer that would run it. Okay. Well, after so many years, the software, there was better software out there. So what he had to do was take the available software and rework it to use in his gun. Well, when he first got the gun out, he hired somebody, paid him, and the fellow developed the software for the gun. So he went back to this person and he said, I'll pay you to do this. And the fellow asked for a huge amount of money. And my client said, well, wait, that's way out of line. And the fellow said, well, I own the technology, not you. And my client went, well, wait, no, I paid you to develop it for me. And he said, well, yeah, I developed it, and you can use it, but it's mine. And they got into this huge fight. And this person had intimate knowledge about the software that was being used and how it should be changed. My client did not know how it worked. It was going to cost him a fortune to go to somebody else. And so if you don't have the internal resources, then this could wind up being a weakness. It all worked out because what happened was the fellow that had the technology developed a terrible cancer that was going to take his life within a matter of months. And so he just asked for a lump sum amount of money so he could live out his few months that he had left relatively comfortably. And he just gave the information and the technology to someone that could work in the firm. And incidentally, it was a Capilano University graduate that BCD hired to work in-house. Okay, opportunities. Unserved market for specific products, few competitors in the area, emerging need for the product or a service, press media coverage of your company. That's an odd one to stick in there, but I guess it would be an opportunity. Then threats, emerging competitors, or existing competitors that see what you're doing that's different and come back to take the market from you. Changing regulatory environment, we've talked about that as a threat. Negative press media coverage, well, okay, that's the other side of the opportunity. Changing customer attitudes towards your company. Okay, so you do the SWOT analysis. Then you come up with your competitive strategy. Cost advantage, differentiation advantage, marketing advantage. Focus on a market niche. Okay, cost advantage, low overhead, low marketing costs, etc. That was my home-based business. I had really low overhead, and it allowed me to do the legal work to make it really good living and undercut my competition. Differentiation advantage, a meaningful differentiation between your product and your competitor's product. I've got a couple of examples of those, but they're okay. I'll use my client up north. They had their lodge, their hunting and fishing lodge, and there was a hunting and fishing lodge down the road. And the hunting and fishing lodge down the road did the same thing year after year after year after year. My client came in and said, hunting, fishing, canoeing, hiking. Okay. We'll fly people into the lakes. We'll have cabins on the lakes. We'll fly the customers in, whereas the other guy has to wait for them to pay to get in. Pardon me. And so his differentiation advantage actually wound up putting that other lodge out of business. Focus on a market niche. Identify a position in a market that has been overlooked, neglected, or abandoned. And I'm going to apologize right now. I can't think of one of those, but if you really wanted to know some, you would go to Richard Hill or David... his last name's gone. One of the marketers in our university. You can contact them by email, and you can ask for examples of that if you want them. Okay, develop a sales forecast. A sales forecast equals the total estimated market size times the estimated growth rate times the market share target that you think you can get. Okay, so you develop a sales forecast. Managing the supply situation. I wanted to talk about that specifically because I'm going to give you an example of how not being able to do that, even through no fault of your own, can kill your business. There was a student in the the tourism department at Capilano University, and I taught him risk management when I was teaching in that faculty as well. And he came up with a product that was really interesting. He found a supplier of solar cells, and most of those are glass, they're heavy, and they're fragile. And this one was actually on a vinyl surface that could even be rolled up. And so he began to develop products like backpacks. Now this picture on slide 60 is not his. I just got that off the internet. And that's something that they attach to the pack and it folds up. But he had his built in so that when you're hiking, the sun would charge your cell phone, your GPS, your computer, and you know, when you hike and then you camp, you had a larger sheet that you could roll out, and you could use that to run a small lamp so that you could read at night and that sort of thing. And this vinyl solar cell was phenomenal in the sense that, you know, oh, gee, I dropped it. Oh, it's okay. And it was light. So he had the supplier, and he began to do backpacks. He actually, I think, had a briefcase that you could charge your cell phone. Well, you know, you just go to the restaurant, you sit your briefcase in the sun, and your cell phone would be charging. And he had all sorts of really interesting products like that. He developed the products, and then he went to Mountain Co-op, and he said, here's my products, will you carry them? And Mountain Co-op said, yes, we will. Come back, we'll sign a contract with you. And between that time and the going back and signing the contract, the United States Army decided that this was a patentable product that was of military value. And so they literally took it. They compensate the person that has the patent. But they said, all the supplies that you can make will go to the U.S. military. And my client goes back to the supplier and he says, okay, I need this many. And the guy says, sorry, can't give it to you. And my client was out of business. Great idea, great opportunity. Snuffed out because there was no suppliers. So you have to be able to find the supplies. Okay, and I know someone that's in the process of building a house. They have a contractor. The contractor's going to get the house to the close-up stage, lock-up they call it. Then this person is going to do the subcontracting and take care of the trades for all the finishing work inside. There's so much building going on in the Sunshine Coast that this person cannot find the subcontractors, and it's going to be hard to find the laborers to do it. No fault of their own. Okay, that completes stage 4, the feasibility study of or the marketing feasibility study, and now we're getting into the cost and profit assessment. And I'll stop here and I'll start uploading all this other information so that I can get it onto videos and you can start watching it. So thank you very much.